Reality's Magicians. The Substrate Directive. Episode 3. The Prague Tunnels. Arrival at the bunker. The rumble of a descending freight elevator echoed through the cramped metal shaft. Ebony, Julian, and Chen stood shoulder to shoulder, flanked by two armed guards in black uniforms. Venko stood at the elevator's console, tapping commands into a small digital pad. Overhead, a lone fluorescent bulb flickered in the stale air. "Welcome to the Prague Tunnels," Venko said with a note of pride. Originally constructed during the Cold War, this bunker complex has been retrofitted for advanced quantum research. No phone signals, no Wi-Fi. Everything is air-gapped except for secure lines. The perfect fortress for your work. Ebony felt a surge of claustrophobia. The notion of burying herself deeper underground for the sake of exploring cosmic secrets was both unsettling and ironically fitting. She glanced at Julian, who offered a reassuring nod. On the flight over, they had poured through the scrambled data from the meltdown fiasco, gleaning what they could about the code's reaction to consciousness. Now they'd refine and expand that knowledge in this new fortress-like lab. The elevator came to a jarring stop about 50 meters below ground. Venko led them out into a corridor lined with reinforced steel doors and red overhead lighting. "Your labs are this way," he said, "and your quarters are further down. We have a medical unit, cafeteria, everything you need." Julian whistled under his breath as they passed a row of server racks housed behind bulletproof glass. "The level of hardware here is intense. I see quantum mainframes I didn't know existed." Venko shrugged. "We keep some of the best technology off the public radar. The Directorate spares no expense." He paused, turning to Ebony. "Your new consciousness integration experiments will be safer here, and we'll keep watch for any infiltration attempts. Don't worry about another meltdown." She gave him a tight smile, remembering the terror of that day. "I appreciate it, Venko. Let's just hope we don't attract more unwanted attention." The lab's heart. They arrived at a large circular room that formed the centerpiece of the bunker's research area. Rows of quantum computers hummed behind transparent shielding. In the center, a dais-like platform housed a newly designed consciousness interface rig. Ebony's eyes widened. It looked like something out of a futuristic film, a sleek recliner with cables running to a helmet-like device studded with sensors. Chen walked around the rig in wonder. "This is next level. Far more advanced than what we had at the Collider. Are these sensors SQUID-based for magnetoencephalography?" Venko nodded. "Yes, among other things. Superconducting quantum interference devices. We also integrated non-invasive transcranial ultrasound capabilities and advanced EEG. The system can measure and modulate your brain's electromagnetic patterns in real time." Ebony exchanged glances with Julian, who said, "So, theoretically, you can get a finer read on the conscious wave function interplay with the subatomic code." "Precisely," Venko replied. "In parallel, we have a mini collider system, not as powerful as the one in Geneva, but sufficient for generating controlled collisions, enough to recreate the prime fractal patterns. If your theory is correct, that consciousness can be tuned to observe or edit those patterns, we should be able to refine the process here without a meltdown." He led them to a series of monitors. A labyrinth of fractal images shimmered on the screen, reminiscent of the patterns Ebony had glimpsed during her experiment. "We've set up a simulation environment that draws from your scrambled data. Our job is to unscramble the essential components of the code and figure out how to systematically manipulate them." Ebony found herself exhaling in both excitement and dread. "We're about to attempt something unprecedented, bridging consciousness with a universal code base. We have to be sure we have ethical protocols." Venko held up a hand. "We do. The Directorate has insisted on a set of guidelines. You can review them, but time is short. We have intel that the rogue group is also active in Eastern Europe. We can't afford to delay." Hidden allies. Over the next few days, Ebony and Julian worked tirelessly, calibrating the consciousness interface rig. They tested it with low-level tasks, like focusing on a geometric shape, to see how the subatomic collisions responded. Meanwhile, Chen fortified the cybersecurity. Everything was locked behind quantum-encrypted tunnels. She set up an intrusion detection system that would alert them if the system was compromised. One day, as Ebony sat in the rec room sipping stale coffee, a stranger approached. He wore the same black uniform as the guards, but Ebony noticed an ID badge that identified him as Krzysztof Nowak, a security consultant. He gave her a polite nod, then spoke in a hushed voice. "You must be Dr. Cartry," he said in a slight Polish accent. "I've heard of your breakthroughs. Impressive." Ebony offered a polite smile. "Thank you. Are you part of Venko's team?" He glanced around, then took a seat across from her. "In a manner of speaking. I've been working with Directorate S for years, specifically on counterintel, but I also have a personal interest in your research." A ripple of caution passed through Ebony. "And why would that be?" He leaned in. "Because I believe that the deeper we dig into this universal code, the more we realize it touches everything, including phenomena we call paranormal. I think we've been seeing glimpses of it for centuries in small miracles, psychic episodes, weird synchronicities, all the stuff dismissed as superstition. But if the code is real, it explains those phenomena as partial or accidental manipulations of reality." Ebony nodded slowly. She had never considered such phenomena from that angle, but it made sense. If consciousness can shape reality at the fundamental level, then the boundary between science and mysticism might blur. "That's quite a theory, Mr. Nowak." He smiled faintly. "Krzysztof, please. I just want you to know that if you need an ally who thinks outside the box, you have one. The Directorate has many layers, and not everyone sees eye to eye. Some want to lock down the code forever. Others want to exploit it for power. Me, I want humanity to evolve responsibly." Ebony felt a surge of relief at his sincerity. "Thank you, Krzysztof. I'll keep that in mind." Breakthrough attempt. Soon enough, Ebony found herself strapped into the consciousness interface rig. Julian stood at a nearby console, monitoring her brainwaves. Over the speakers, Chen's voice directed them from the control booth. "All systems nominal. Mini collider is spinning up. Ebony, can you hear me?" "Yes," Ebony replied, her voice echoing in the helmet's enclosed space. She felt pulses of ultrasound scanning her skull, while squid sensors captured her neural magnetism. A gentle hum signaled the miniature particle collisions beginning in the adjacent chamber. Julian watched as fractal patterns bloomed on the monitors. "We're generating prime-coded sequences. Ebony, we need you to focus on a standard geometric shape. Let's start simple." Ebony closed her eyes and pictured a sphere, rotating in a black void. She focused on its curvature, the edges of her mental image. On the screen, the fractal patterns modulated slightly, forming concentric circles that pulsed in time with Ebony's EEG alpha waves. Chen's voice: "Signal alignment at 30%. Ebony, we see some correlation. Try deepening your focus." Ebony recalled her previous attempt in Geneva. She inhaled slowly, letting her mind delve into the sphere's interior, imagining its hollowness, its center. The fractal patterns began shifting more radically. The prime-coded sequences started forming wave-like rings. Julian's eyes widened. "We're at 60% alignment," he said, excitement in his tone. "This is incredible." But Ebony didn't stop. A part of her wanted to push further, to see how much she could influence. She altered the sphere in her mind's eye, elongating it into an ellipsoid. The fractals followed suit, warping into elongated shapes. The alignment soared to 80%. Ebony felt a sudden tingling in her limbs, as though her own neurons were dancing with the quantum code. She kept going. An unexpected glitch. Without warning, the fractal patterns on the monitors shattered into jagged spikes. A loud beep jarred the entire lab. Ebony's vision blurred as she felt a surge of dizziness in her head. "Something's wrong," Julian muttered. "We're getting interference from an external signal." Again? Chen confirmed over the comms. We have a breach attempt. Some unknown node is trying to sync with Ebony's neural feed. Ebony, cut the link. We can't risk them hijacking your signals. Ebony tried to focus on shutting down, but her mind was in a half-trance. She felt an odd presence, as if another consciousness was brushing against hers through the fractal code. It felt invasive, a cold infiltration at the edge of her thoughts. Julian manually pressed the disconnect on the console. The rig powered down, and Ebony felt the ultrasound pulses fade. She gasped, opening her eyes, heart pounding. That was weird, she managed to say. Someone tried to piggyback on my mental state. Julian put a hand on her shoulder. Seems like it. The question is, how? We're supposed to be offline here. Chen's voice was tense. They must have planted a quantum-level backdoor in the system. The code you're generating is being broadcast in ways we don't fully understand. If the code is truly fundamental, maybe they can tap into it from anywhere, bypassing normal electronics. Venko, who had rushed into the lab, wore a grave expression. This is precisely what we feared. Our enemy is learning to manipulate the same code. We can't treat this like standard cybersecurity anymore. It's reality security. The shaman's warning. That night, Ebony couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering the bunker's corridor, mind reeling from the day's events. Part of her felt exhilarated at how directly she could shape the fractals, but the infiltration had frightened her deeply. She didn't want her consciousness to become a battleground. In a dimly lit alcove, she spotted Christoph again. He was alone, leaning against a wall with a small tablet in hand. Upon seeing her, he nodded. Couldn't sleep. Ebony shook her head. Number too many thoughts. Christoph tapped his tablet, showing Ebony an image of swirling fractals. I captured a snapshot of your alignment data. It's remarkable. You nearly reached an 80% correlation. But see this section. He zoomed in on a segment riddled with geometric distortions. This is where the external signal tried to piggyback. Notice how it resonates at a slightly different phase. She looked closer and saw a fractal pattern layered on top of her own. It was spikier, more chaotic. That's them. The magicians, I presume. Christoph nodded. Yes, and they're skilled. They have ways of bridging consciousness with code from remote distances. In some circles, they're said to have rituals that combine advanced math with old esoteric techniques. Not just a group of hackers and scientists. They have an almost cult-like structure. They call themselves by many names, but the moniker, reality's magicians, fits because they literally aim to cast illusions that rewrite truth. Ebony's hand trembled slightly as she handed back the tablet. What does that mean for us? That they're more dangerous than you think. If they succeed in overshadowing your consciousness, they might force you to reveal the final piece of the puzzle. Or worse, manipulate you to do their bidding from the inside. A chill ran down Ebony's spine. She thanked Christoph for the warning and returned to her room, only to toss and turn in bed. With the code, reality was no longer stable. Even the sanctity of her own mind felt threatened. Escalation. Over the next few days, Ebony and Julian worked to incorporate advanced mental firewalls, techniques that Chen and Christoph claimed could block external infiltration. They meditated with specialized brainwave entrainment audio, practiced mental focusing strategies, and integrated encryption subroutines into the interface rig that required Ebony's biometric plus certain cryptographic keys to prevent unauthorized tapping. At the same time, they refined their experiments. Controlled smaller collisions with Ebony's guided observation yielded consistent, reproducible shifts in the data. They were on the verge of a major paper in hacked reality, except, of course, they could never publish this in normal channels. As Ebony practiced the new system, she managed to repeatedly shape fractals to match her intentions, turning geometric constructs into loops, spirals, polygons. Over time, it felt more intuitive, like learning a new language. She was effectively programming the substrate with her mind. The final piece, they hypothesized, would be bridging the code from micro quantum collisions, to macro, everyday objects or living systems. One evening, Ebony succeeded in a small but startling demonstration. A single live cell sample, kept in a petri dish near the collider, showed an anomalous growth pattern exactly when Ebony visualized it dividing. Repeated trials suggested a correlation, though Ebony wasn't certain. Still, the possibility sent shockwaves through the bunker's community. If Ebony's conscious code manipulation could influence living cells, what else was possible? A rude interruption. That same night, an explosion rocked the corridor outside the main lab. Emergency lights flared red. Alarms screeched. Ebony and Julian sprang from their cots, rushing toward the sound. They found a half-collapsed hallway where a bomb had detonated. Smoke choked the air, and a guard lay injured on the floor. From behind the smoke, Ebony saw shadowy figures wearing dark tactical gear. They fired silent, energy-like pulses at Directorate guards. Ebony had only seen this sort of weapon in rumor, directed energy rifles that used advanced plasma. The magicians had arrived in force. Chen scrambled next to Ebony, pistol drawn. "We have to protect the lab. They're after the code." Christoph appeared from a side corridor, also armed. He signaled them to follow him. "There's a secure route to the main servers. Hurry!" They sprinted down an auxiliary passage. Behind them, muffled gunfire and more explosions echoed. Ebony's heart hammered. If the magicians had breached the bunker, they might seize the research. All the encryption in the world wouldn't help if they physically took the servers and Ebony. The server room standoff. Reaching the server room, Ebony, Julian, and Christoph locked the reinforced door. Muffled shouts echoed from the hallway. Through security monitors, they watched intruders systematically clearing each corridor, knocking out Directorate guards with alarming ease. Ebony's stomach churned at the realization that these people likely had some advanced knowledge, perhaps gleaned from partial code infiltration. Christoph turned to Ebony. "We can't let them get this data. You must wipe the servers, destroy the code if necessary." "But we've come so far," Ebony cried, her voice tremulous. "We're on the cusp of controlling transpositional editing. If we lose it all—" Julian put a hand on her arm. "Better that we lose it than the magicians seize it." With tears in her eyes, Ebony nodded. She sat at a console and entered the highest-level credentials. She initiated a secure data destruction routine, systematically erasing the prime-coded fractal sequences, the consciousness integration algorithms, everything. The screen displayed a progress bar, 10%, 20%. Outside, gunfire drew closer. The door shook under heavy impact. Ebony's heart pounded. 80%, 90%, 95%. The door began to buckle, metal screeching. Finally, 100%. Data destruction complete. Ebony ejected a single flash drive containing partial backups. She quickly hid it in an inside pocket, uncertain if it might prove vital later. The door crashed open. Smoke poured in. Several masked figures stormed the room, rifles aimed. One shouted, "Freeze!" Down on the ground. Christoph, Ebony, and Julian raised their hands. Chen was nowhere to be seen, likely fighting elsewhere in the bunker. The masked intruders wore no insignia, but Ebony could sense they were the rumored magicians. The lead figure pulled off his mask, revealing a gaunt face with sharp features. His eyes glinted with an unsettling intensity. "Where is the code?" he demanded, in a low, resonant voice. His accent was unplaceable. Ebony played dumb. "Gone. We destroyed it." He smirked. "I don't believe you." He stepped forward, pressing the barrel of his rifle under Ebony's chin. "We know your mind holds the key to the final piece. You demonstrated it in your collider experiments." Julian's fists clenched. "Don't you dare!" One of the other intruders slammed the butt of a rifle into Julian's gut, doubling him over. Ebony stifled a cry, tears stinging her eyes. The gaunt leader turned to Ebony. "You will come with us. Cooperate, and perhaps your friends will live. Resist, and we'll take what we need from your brain by force." Christoph tensed, as though ready to fight, but Ebony realized they were outnumbered and outgunned. She'd never felt so powerless. Then, unexpectedly, a shot rang out from behind the intruders. Chen burst through the door, gun blazing. Two masked figures went down before they could react. The leader turned, returning fire. In the chaos, Ebony dove behind a server rack. Julian and Christoph followed. Bullets ricocheted, sparks flying. Ebony searched frantically for a way out. Then she felt a gloved hand seize her wrist. She looked up to see the gaunt leader, unmasked face twisted in fury, dragging her away from the firefight. She screamed, but the noise of gunfire drowned it out. Julian leapt forward, but another intruder tackled him. An unexpected reprieve. Just as Ebony thought she was doomed, a second explosion rocked the bunker. Debris rained down from the ceiling, forcing everyone to scramble for cover. Thick dust filled the room, reducing visibility to near zero. Ebony choked and coughed, yanking herself from the leader's grip. She crawled amid the chaos, searching for Julian. She bumped into Christoph, who pulled her to her feet. "This way," he shouted over the din. They found Julian, half-dazed, but alive. Together, they stumbled out a side exit, leaving the server room behind. Doors slammed shut behind them, sealing as the bunker's emergency containment protocols activated. The sirens sounded a final wail before flickering out. Into the labyrinth. Staggering through the smoke-filled corridors, Ebony realized the entire bunker was compromised. Venko's voice crackled over a failing intercom. "All personnel evacuate through the west tunnels. Repeat, west tunnels. Gas leaks. Containment breach." Static cut him off. Christoph guided them through twisting passages that seemed more ancient catacombs than modern bunker. Built decades ago, some corridors were stacked with archaic supplies, old machinery, rusted steel beams. The red emergency lights barely illuminated their way. Finally, they emerged into a broader chamber with an arched ceiling. Long-forgotten Soviet murals peeled from the walls. Ebony gasped for breath, lungs burning from the dust. Julian collapsed against a crate, wincing. Christoph scouted the path ahead, returning with a grim look. "The main exit is blocked. The magicians are swarming the upper levels, and the auxiliary hatch caved in from the explosions." Ebony's thoughts spun. "So we're trapped." He hesitated. "There's an old cargo tunnel that leads to a drainage system. It's not on any official map, but I found references in the bunker's original schematics. If we can reach it, we might escape to the surface, but we have to move quietly." Outside, the distant sound of gunfire and collapsing masonry echoed. Ebony struggled to steady her racing heart. She felt the hidden flash drive in her pocket, her only copy of partial code. The question pounded in her mind. What now? They were battered, unarmed, except for the small pistol Chen had tossed to Christoph, and the entire top level of the bunker was controlled by a hostile force. If the magicians discovered Ebony's partial code, all her efforts to protect reality would be undone. With no other option, Ebony, Julian, and Christoph prepared to venture into the uncharted depths of the labyrinth. Behind them, the carnage continued, the fate of Chen and Venko uncertain. Ahead lay tunnels that might lead to freedom or to an even darker threat. At every step, Ebony felt the cosmic code thrumming at the edges of her consciousness, a reminder that her mind had glimpsed knowledge too grand to remain hidden forever. And somewhere in these caverns, or perhaps beyond them, the gaunt leader of the magicians was still hunting her. She was no longer just a quantum researcher. She had become a living key to rewriting reality, a caretaker of knowledge so dangerous it could unmake the world. Thus concluded the third episode, setting the stage for a deeper journey into the labyrinth of secrets and illusions, with Ebony, Julian, and a handful of allies struggling to keep cosmic code from falling into the wrong hands.